Today we're talking about whether or not Judas Iscariot was evil, or was he the misunderstood hero, or was it neither of those things? Hey, I'm Jared. Thank you so much for joining me today. A little housekeeping thing real quick. This channel is now available in an audio-only form on all the other places that you get podcasts. Apple Podcasts and Google Play and Spotify and all of those places is now available in an audio-only format. I am getting caught up on releasing the episodes in audio format only, but they will very soon be caught up, and it'll always release on YouTube a little bit before it releases on audio format, but it will be available that way. So if you would like to listen and not watch, that is totally fine. So check that out wherever you enjoy your podcasts. But right now, what we want to talk about is whether or not Judas Iscariot was evil. So that's the general consensus, that Judas was super evil. He betrayed Jesus. He handed him over to the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and he just utterly betrayed him. And he betrayed him with a kiss. Like, how backstabbing can you be? And he got greedy, and he just betrayed him. Then there has been a more recent resurgence of this idea that Judas and Jesus had this secret pact, and Jesus had said, I can't do this unless somebody betrays me, so you'll be my super tightest buddy ever, and you're gonna be the one to hand me over, but don't worry, it's totally cool. I need you to do that, so do me a solid and betray me. Which I actually don't like either of those options, really. See, I think that Judas being the hero, it doesn't fit at all. He was not the hero. He did not have this thing. Even in Matthew 26:45, Jesus is in the garden. Then he came to the disciples and said to them, sleep and take your rest later on. See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. See, even Jesus said he was betrayed. So, that's clearly not Judas being a hero speak. So we're just going to chuck that idea out early on, because it's definitely not that one. But what I do want to sort of wrestle with here a little bit is, I don't think that he was so much just straight evil. And let me talk to you. I just read a verse about how Jesus said he was betrayed. How could it not be clearer than him saying that he was betrayed? Well, let's take a look at that word betrayed. It is the Greek word paradiadomai, which is the Strong's Concordance number G3860, and it means to give over, deliver unto, or betray. So then I started reading through all the other places in the Old Testament that word is used. And what's really interesting is that the only time it is translated betrayed is when it's referring to Judas. In every other instance, it's translated delivered or handed over or given to. So let's take a look at some of the other places that this exact same word is used, and I'm going to read it as the word betrayed, and you tell me if it fits. Matthew 25:14, for it will be like a man going on a journey who calls his servants and betrays to them his property. Matthew 27:2, and they bound him and they led him away and betrayed him over to Pilate the governor. Luke 10:22, all things have been betrayed to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except for the Father, or who the Father is except the Son, and anyone whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Romans 6:17, but thanks be to God that you who were once slaves to sin have become obedient from the heart to the standard of teaching in which you were betrayed. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and betrayed himself up for her. So, as you can see, that word does not fit as betrayed in many other circumstances. Now, I am not saying that that word cannot mean betrayed. It can. It has a connotation of handing somebody over. If when somebody is arrested, they will hand them over to prison. They will deliver them to prison. It is a context. It can be a context of betrayal. But my point is that it doesn't have to be betrayed. It doesn't have to be betrayed. It can be delivered. It can be handed over. See, all of these other instances, it says that they were that Christ gave himself up for the church. Like, it doesn't say that he betrayed himself to her. Like, that is bonkers. It's weird. Or even that how, like, Paul is telling the Romans that how he betrayed to them the standard of teachings. Like, what? That doesn't make any sense. But he did give it over to them. He did deliver it to them. And in some translations, there's words entrusted, which is really interesting. Like, I don't know how you can get from entrusted and betrayed. Like, those things are not similar. The standard idea is that Judas got greedy, and it did say that he was like stealing from the pot. Overall, he was collecting a little on top for himself. So did he have a problem with greed? He probably did have a problem with greed. I'm not saying that he didn't. Like, it's pretty clear that he seems like he really struggled with that. But as far as that being the main motivation, everywhere they've gone, they've been taken care of and they've been like provided for. So him being just sheer greedy doesn't quite add up. Let's look at how much 30 pieces of silver is, okay? 30 pieces of silver is difficult for us to know how much exactly it was, because it depends on who was minting those coins at the time and how pure they actually were, because it was based on weight, not purity. So people can be forging stuff with silver coins. But that said, it seems like it's about a month's worth of income. Now, I don't know about you, but I have no one in my life that I would even consider betraying for a month's worth of income. Now, if we have like a year's worth of income, well, that starts to get a little bit more tempting. And then if we're talking about like 10 years of income, well, that gets more tempting. Like the price of 1 month's income, it seems pretty small to me to be a reason to betray someone. That seems crazy low. I don't think that adds up entirely. So what if Judas's entire betrayal was actually politically motivated? Why would he betray Jesus with a kiss? Jesus is very well known, and them showing up in a garden and him being like, just so we're clear, the only one I'm betraying is Jesus. And I know that not all of you know who he is, so let me make it perfectly clear. I'll go over and give him a kiss. And now there will be no misunderstanding as to which one that you're going for. Like, everybody knows Jesus at this point. Like, he rode in on a donkey and like most of the city was like proclaiming his arrival. Like, he is well known. Why is he betraying him with a kiss? See, what I think was truly happening is that Judas decided that Jesus wasn't moving fast enough to deliver them from the Romans. I think that he saw Jesus as a political messiah who had come to finally free the Jews from the Romans. So what Judas was doing was he was deciding that Jesus was not moving fast enough, and he thought, if I could force a confrontation, then Jesus would have to rise up, he would have to take over, and he would have to just wipe out all of his enemies. Like, it starts with the Sadducees, it starts with the religious leaders of the day, and then ends with him conquering Rome. He's come to bring the kingdom of Israel back to the top. Like, that's what he's looking for. And because Judas thinks, well, all we really need here is a little push We need to strike a match, to create some sparks, and this thing's going to explode. And Jesus is going to be like, fine, you know what? This is it. I've had enough of all of this stuff. And he's going to call in the angels, and he's just going to wipe out Rome. Like, this is what Jesus came here to do. Despite the fact that Jesus has talked at length about how that is not his mission, but they cannot see past the Roman occupation. They cannot see past the current political environment. So I think that Judas came to Jesus in the garden and gave him a kiss, quotation marks there, and says, but got close enough to him to say, hey, now it's time. Now it's time to rise up and to take out the Romans. And he wants Jesus to know that, like, he was going to be the spark that led to the Messiah rising up and taking out the Romans. And then stood back and watched as Jesus got led away. All of the disciples ran away, and he was in total captivity. And Judas realizes what happened, that his entire plan backfired. And that's why he has so much regret, is because it wasn't the way it was supposed to go down. Jesus was supposed to rise up and defeat his enemies. That's what was supposed to happen. And he got paid to fulfill the Messiah's call. To Judas, I think it was a win-win situation. He gets to get a little money on the side. He also gets to sort of force Jesus's hand into rising up and defeating his enemies. Like, it's time. Let's do this. So what is the entire point of why I think that's like, great. None of us really knows what really happened. We can't say for sure, for certain. I'm not even saying 100% that this is exactly what happens. I'm just saying that from my perspective, this makes a ton more sense than anything else that's happened before. All the other explanations don't make as much sense to me as from a storyline. And why is that the case? Is because I think there's very few people who would actually truly betray Jesus if he was just walking along on the earth. Judas saw all the miracles. Judas performed some of those miracles. Like, he was part of the entire thing. Most people that we know of that walk away from the church or hate Christianity, it's like almost exclusively it's because they get sick and tired of the people in the church. I don't see Judas getting sick and tired of Jesus. I don't see that being the thing that drives him crazy and like just he wants to see Jesus die. But what I do see happen in the church even today, and what we can all identify with, is attempting to force God's hand into doing things a very specific way because that's the way that we see that God should do it. And so the story of Judas trying to manipulate Jesus's plan into being something that he thought he saw very clearly, the whole point of it all, that's a story that I can identify with in my own life, where I've said, okay, God, this is how this has got to go down. And I've run full steam into things saying, this is God's will for my life. This is everything that I'm supposed to do. And the whole time God's saying, wait, this isn't the right plan. I have a plan for you. I'm going to take you on a path. And I'm like, nope, this is definitely the only plan that there could be. And God's on board with it 100%. I've tried to manipulate God into changing his will into my life for the way that I want to. And I bet you can too. That makes that story so much more relatable. We've seen that story so many more times played out over the years with all sorts of people who are in church power, that they have tried to manipulate God's plan and to make their own will happen. That story seems pretty clear to me. And when we look at the differences between Peter and Judas, like, there really isn't that big of a difference here, especially if you get rid of that word betrayed and you replace it with handed over, that Judas was the one who handed him over to the religious leaders of the day. Then it is very clear, like, Jesus says, I'm going to be crucified and killed. And Peter says, let it never be so. I will die with you. I'll never let it happen. And Jesus is like, well, chill your tush there a little second, Peter. Like, before tonight's even over, you're going to deny me 3 times. And Peter's just straight offended. Like, how dare you even imply that? And then when push came to shove, then Peter just straight up left and denied Jesus entirely. Like, I've never even met the man. The differences between Peter and Judas is not that big. Judas was just the instigator and Peter was the reaction. But they were on the same level as far as I'm concerned. And we learn a lot from Peter denying Jesus. There's lessons in there, but we are like, well, Judas was just evil. Luke even says that Satan entered him and like pushed him to doing evil things, which I'm not saying that Luke's wrong. I'm saying that maybe it was more about the pride in Judas's heart, that he was like, no, I'm definitely going to do this because I'm smart enough to see how this whole thing plays out and I'm going to manipulate it. Like, yeah, seriously. I think that it had more to do with that because we can identify with that story rather than just somebody being evil, and we don't really see it that way. And we just discount them as those people who are evil, and we should abolish those people who are evil because that's just what we need to do because we're not evil. But when the line is blurred a little more and I can see myself being somebody who's manipulated God's plan, because that's the way I see it happening, that gets a little scarier because that means I could be a Judas. And I have been a Judas. I've been a Peter. And I really wish that Judas hadn't killed himself because it would have been amazing to see his relationship with Jesus after his resurrection. That would have been amazing. I would have loved to have seen that. But we won't know that part. So the only thing we can do is just keep reading, keep searching, asking God to see what he thinks and how he sees it all. This is how I feel like God has led me to see this whole thing, that it's a scary place that I could be a Judas. And the warning is, don't try to manipulate God's plan. Let him fulfill it in his time. And let's just keep following him on that. When Jesus was captured, all the disciples were shaken. Like, all of them were freaking out and they had no idea what they were doing. I think it was because they all saw Jesus as being a political guy, that he was a political Messiah. And Jesus repeatedly said that that wasn't the case. And the next episode, we're going to go into that even more in depth, and we'll figure that whole thing out. So anyway, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you spending your time with me. Never forget, you are not alone. And welcome to the Martyr Life.